everybody, to our next episode of Define Yourself. And I'm very excited about our next guest. Before I get into that, though, I just want to remind everybody that the Side-Down Method is a multidisciplinary approach to maximizing human potential. And what breaks my heart is seeing professionals and managers who believe they can't reach the next rung in their career ladder. And I help those professionals and managers to thrive in their current role and use it to position themselves for further growth and impact. And what they discover through this process is that they also, and perhaps more importantly, gain increased meaning in the work they do. The Define Yourself show is basically a show that helps us have a conversation with captivating, empathetic, and motivating individuals who possess a unique ability to tap into and uncover their extraordinary human potential and that potential of other people. And we aim to explore this human potential at work and beyond from a perspective that prioritizes each of us as whole humans before we see our roles as employees, business owners, or fill in the blank. And so without further ado, let me introduce RJ. Welcome, RJ. Let me just give you a bit of an introduction here. Mr. Grimshaw is the former president of the CEO of Unify Equipment Finance from 2013 to October of 2023. During his tenure at Unify, RJ led a transformation that resulted in the company growing revenue from 13 million to 150 million. Prior thereto, Mr. Grimshaw has held several leadership positions with Everbank and Key Equipment Finance. Mr. Grimshaw previously served on the board of directors for Equipment Leasing Finance Association as treasurer. He's the author of Able Leadership and the leading authority on intrapreneurship. We're going to dive into that one in depth today, sales and leadership. And thank you so much, RJ, for coming.
Well, I'm glad to be here. And I loved your intro in terms of what you're doing with your program and the value that you're adding back to people. And I just love the people aspect because that's really what intrapreneurship's all about and what it can do for people's careers. And it's truly a win-win situation for the person as well as the organization.
Absolutely. So let's dive in. So why don't you start off with telling us a little bit more about what is intrapreneurship?
Sure. If you think of intrapreneurship, it is where an employee with an entrepreneurial spirit works within the confines of another business. So think of it as a business within a business. The term actually first appeared in the early 80s by management consultants Gifford and Elizabeth Pino, who published the book Intrapreneuring, which is the Bible of intrapreneurship. And it's really just a fascinating concept that continues to gain momentum, not only here in the US, but across the entire world per se. And as a matter of fact, it's adopted more as we see, and we're studying and things of that nature, actually overseas. And we're trying to educate people here in the United States. Once again, we look at it from a two-pronged approach, one for the individual and what it can do for their career. And then secondly, what it can do for the organization when they implement that. It doesn't matter the size of the organization, but if they truly have what we call an iOS, an entrepreneur operating system, there's many benefits that will come from that.
That's amazing. So, I've already have like 5 extra questions, but let's dig in a little bit more. Then we'll take our little side route. But tell me a little bit about the value. You touched upon it a little bit, but what does intrapreneurship bring to both the individual, like you said, and the company?
Well, if we look at the person individually first, one is going to be job satisfaction, career satisfaction. I'll take myself as a personal example of this. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad's business plan hangs behind me. My grandfathers, both sides of the family were entrepreneurs. One owned a soda distributorship, one owned a florist. So it was just naturally ingrained in me to really just see how owning your own business, the ups and downs, the challenges and the opportunities that presented itself. And I fell into corporate America by accident. I owned my first business at 23 to the age of 30. And then again, just by accident. And then I found success in corporate America, where I started out as an individual contributor in sales. And in a 13-year span, I went from an individual contributor, learning an industry, to a CEO. And that's just unheard of. Now, granted, I was very lucky, very fortunate, surrounded by absolutely amazing people. But during that career, or during that time, I found the term intrapreneurship and what an entrepreneur was, and I gravitated towards that. So the last 10 years of my career, I really wanted to educate myself, educate other people, and then also use this within Unify as a cultural and an operating system just to prove out the proof points. And now we're going to market to educate business owners as well as the individuals what it can do for them.
That's amazing. So it really resonates with me. So before it was legal, I had a job, but it was my own company.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember in the 70s, they had this like liquid silver, liquid gold. It was necklaces. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
I designed my own necklaces. I laugh because, later my 35-year career ended, approximately a year ago, when I left to build my, my Seidel method and my coaching, mentorship business. Anyway, I had to do inventory management as well as design, as well as pricing, as well as selling. And I had a 35-year career in, IT, but supply chain. And I laugh because it started when I was 13 and I wasn't like legal to actually work anywhere. So I just resonate with this idea of always, kind of you catch the bug of entrepreneurship and you take it with you, to the big company.
You do, and we actually educate, again, the individual as well as the business owners or leadership within an organization that there's, from our perspective, there's many traits, but there's really 5 certain traits that we help educate upon in terms of identifying an entrepreneur within your organization or self-reflection of that individual. And it's really an ownership mentality. So you would own any situation that you put yourself in. You're a life learner. So you enjoyed when you were learning all those different things within your job description or outside your job description, and you just didn't think it was extra work because you were looking at it from a learning perspective. They're passionate about life. They're passionate about everything that they do. They take calculated risks. So they're not that risk taker, maybe like the entrepreneur is. They'll take risk, but they're going to really analyze and look at it. And then the biggest thing is that they have a drive to spark change. They're really change agents within an organization or within a company, that they're always looking at different processes, different products, and trying to innovate and make it better. So that's where it's very critical as an entrepreneur that your beliefs and values align with the company that you're working with, because if there is a misalignment there, it just won't work for either party.
So that kind of brings me, I think, to the next question, which is, help us understand what an IOS is. And if I could add a secondary question, because I was going to ask you about the 5 traits. Is that something that you find you can influence by teaching or, coaching other employees? What are kind of your thoughts about that?
It really, if we're talking about just from the business aspect, so say if we have a business owner that contacts us or a business owner wants to work with us, really that's where it starts. If they are, usually they're in a situation where they either have a lot of turnover in the business, they feel maybe they don't have employee or team member engagement, maybe they're stagnant from a growth perspective and they're looking to try and do something else. And there's many programs out there, and we're not a fit for everyone, but there's EOS, there's scaling, there's we could go on and on. But when an owner or a leader has made that conscious decision that they want to try an entrepreneur operating system, we'll educate them around the communication, how it should be facilitated. And it's just not a one stop and we're done. It's sort of like I use a metaphor. You just don't go to the gym one time, work out, and you're buff. It's a process over time. And there's absolutely no downside by deploying this type of culture. Matter of fact, 76% of all employees within organizations feel they have an idea that can impact the company's overall success. However, they're not being tapped into, and that's why there's a low level, I believe, there's a low level of engagement across the country in regards to people working within the organizations.
Yeah, I know I was in the management track for years when I was working at Nestle and Microsoft. And then when I kind of shifted careers and moved into IT when I was at Microsoft, and then at Costco, I wasn't in management. But one thing I did observe is there did seem to be sort of a gap in perception, if you will. Like senior leaders, even mid leaders, thought that they were communicating the strategy and the goals enough, but us on the front lines were like, no, you're not. like, please 10x your communication so that we kind of, tap into it and get it. And so that's perhaps one aspect of your iOS. I don't know.
Communication is very key. And again, we support the leadership around that, because the last thing you want to do is, and we've all seen it, we've all participated in it, we're all guilty of it, of rolling out an initiative and getting everyone excited about it. And then 30 days or 45 days into it, it's crickets. There's nothing, no more communication around it. And it really beats morale down when you do things of that nature. So again, we go through a very defined process of vetting business owners before we deploy this, as I was talking about earlier, in regards to, we want to ensure that they're fully committed to this. And it doesn't take a lot of work, and we provide all the tools to help them. To answer your question earlier in regards to, can you identify or influence, it's really a combination of both. Where we start with our processes, it goes back to the people, right? It's the humans that are driving the organization, and they're the most significant asset of any type of company. So we actually give an assessment test where it's a 20-minute assessment, and it picks out the identifying factors for an intrapreneur or a non-intrapreneur. And I would like to mention the caveat, though. Every business can't be all intrapreneurs, just like every business can't be entrepreneurs. And we look at the focusing on the 80-20 rule. You want 80 to be your functional, and then 20 your vital, and those vital are your intrapreneurs. Functional, let me give you an example of that. We categorize team members as level 1, level 2, and level 3. And that just gives us as a basis points where you have a functional employee, which is that 80% at level 1. They're very good at their job. They can follow the process. They show up. They have a good attitude. But however, you're never going to get anything more out of this team member or this employee. That's what they're good at, and that's great. Then as you transition to a level 2 or level 3, it becomes a little bit more vital, and they can create the processes when asked. And then level 3 is what the intrapreneur is. They show the signs of intrapreneurship. They understand the inputs and the outputs of the organization, which means that they can create systems and solve problems across the other departments without adding any responsibility in terms of resources and things of that nature. They're influencing the behaviors to make the company better within the organization. And I can actually show you, or tell you a story how that worked at Unify. I had a gentleman who was in sales that came to me, and it was a blind spot on my part as the president CEO of the organization for an online payment portal. And again, we lend money and we have to take money back to pay for the money that we've lent. And I thought of it as, well, they just write a check and send it in. And he was a younger gentleman and said, no, we need more of a digital platform. And I said, unfortunately, we don't have anything allocated in the budget this year to do that. And he put together a business case and said, what if I came along, I spearheaded it, I worked with our IT department, I would work with the outside vendor to ensure that, everything was set up properly. And I said, go for it. And we worked on a plan. And 3 months later, it was completed. And he still was focused on his core responsibility, which is, of course, selling and growing customer relationships. But again, he believed in our vision. He believed in our mission. And he had that idea. And we had fostered those ideas to be shared with us. Now, today, that platform on a monthly basis processes close to $100,000 of payments from our customers. And it's a customer satisfaction improvement overall to the company as well. So you have to have the environment where you can have those ideas shared and then execute upon those, which are going to be meaningful for the individual, because again, he learned from that. We talked about the traits earlier, but it improved the company as well.
That's such a wonderful story. I have a couple questions, but real quick, that story reminds me of a couple things. One, and you can tell me if I'm misunderstanding kind of your thoughts about entrepreneurship, but agile, the whole software development style, where they talk about, self-organizing teams and the ability to have that, the delegation of authority within that team, they're maybe not creating, the entire enterprise, architecture, but they're doing the best they can in these, small experiments, if you will, of 2 to 4 weeks. So I think that's a model that fits into an entrepreneurship kind of way. And the second one reminds me, I don't know if you remember kind of the whole lean manufacturing, which irony of ironies, if you know that story.
Mm-hmm.
There was a US person who figured it out in Japan, and then Toyota. And then what they did is they gave, for the first time ever, frontline manufacturing, people the ability to stop the entire, manufacturing because something was wrong, because it's much better to fix the problems upstream than to try to retroactively, fix the cars at, 10x or whatever the number was. So is that a little bit kind of the thought around?
Very, 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 very similar. We're saying pretty much the same thing and the same philosophy. It's just, we use, there's a lot of organizations that look at intrapreneurship as an innovation type of project management. And there's a lot of products that have been innovated because of intrapreneurs. However, we look at it more as just a operating system and a culture where communication is taking place. There's more transparency. There's more co-missioning of the overall mission of the organization. And what you're doing is you're really inversing the org chart per se, where you're allowing the organization, the humans within the company that are in the trenches on a daily basis, making those decisions, like your example, where they could shut down a line to make an improvement without having to go to management for that.
Yeah, there's another really powerful principle. Of course, now I'm not going to remember the name of it, so I'll have to get back to you. But co-creation, Dr. Cialdini, I don't know if you're familiar with his best-selling book. I don't even know how many best-selling book lists it was. But anyway, Dr. Cialdini's like regular reading for his book called Influence. And he talks about the 7 different principles of influence. But one of the sub-principles is co-creation.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think you're harnessing this co-creation, like especially with the example of the gentleman you were talking about. Like, he wanted to do his job, but in order to do it, he wanted to add value in a way that needed budget approval. So he had to bring you along. And so together, to a certain extent, you co-created, maybe he did the heavy lifting, but that's a very powerful principle that seems to be tapped in while you're doing what you're doing.
It is. And a Gallup study that was just recently conducted shows that when organizations run an entrepreneurial culture, they have a 20% higher employee engagement rates across the organization because, again, it's a healthier work environment. They're more productive and they're loyal and they want to contribute. And at the end of the day, if you peel everything away, that's what we're trying to do. Just increase the level of engagement across the business and really have transparency and open communication, because with that, you're going to see an energy level increase because people have that ownership mentality like you were just talking about.
Actually, the third example is Six Sigma. Are you familiar with how they do Six Sigma projects?
Somewhat.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So anybody who is in, I know that when I was at Costco, there was quite a few people. There was one guy who spearheaded an amazing transformation. I think it started with optical. But anyway, anybody in the entire facility can see something and say, I think that there's efficiencies we can gain out of this, or increased, quality or whatever. And so they kind of put a proposal together, and then they gather all the data. And then from the data emerges, possibly the answer. And so, but it's grassroots identification, and then it's grassroots driving the change, with approval.
I love it because, and I have this saying, which my wife reminds me at times I shouldn't say, but I do all the time, that people lie, data doesn't. So when you look at the data, that's really validating maybe what your gut is telling you or your instincts are telling you, but the data is always factual. And I love your example of the bigger organizations in terms of Costco, because they have the resources to allow to do that, and things of that nature. And that's why I'm so passionate about working with the small businesses. And when I define small businesses, that can be anything from, 5 million in sales to 100 million. But really, the value of it is that SMB across the country that are just employing so many folks that are really under the gun with the economy that we're in, inflation and things of that nature, where they can make this minor tweak within their organization and see incredible results fairly quick.
Yeah. So before I go to the next question, since I kind of outed myself as a former IT person, does your Intrapreneurship operating system actually include software, or is that just kind of the way that you're describing the culture building and the communication?
Yeah, great question. So we're actually working on a software platform right now. We're working with an organization that is located in the UK that actually has a platform, software that will sit over Microsoft Teams. And it's primarily around the tracking of ideas and just a whole process around running this operating system. So that's why we've transitioned to the iOS operating system. We don't have the software in place yet. We're still working out the betas, testing of it and things of that nature. But when we have that, that's when we're going to be able to go to market with a full package product. And if business owners just want to leverage the software, they're able to do that. But if they want a full immersed type of product or program, that's where we come in. And again, it's a 12-month to 18-month investment for organizations. And we have best practices and case studies that we're able to show people. And it's really up to the business owner and or the CEO or manager of that certain division to deploy. And we've actually seen what's interesting in bigger companies where, everyone's maybe allocated a certain budget that they can use for training and education, things of that nature, where we're able to go into that organization and work with a department, maybe of 50 people, have success there. And then all of a sudden you start seeing the other managers asking for us to work with their division as well. And then it spreads through the whole organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. So how does one identify as an entrepreneur? You talked a little bit about the traits, but is there more to this question?
There's a lot more, but really I always enjoy speaking at different panels and things of that nature, because you see people spark up and they'll smile and you see them whispering to each other where they're self-identifying and they're like, that's me, that's who I am. And until someone educated me and said, you have these tendencies. The other thing that I really love to focus on is that it helps people with confidence. And we all need more and more confidence in the world we live in today, how crazy it is. And when you can self-identify as an entrepreneur and realize the value that you are truly adding to the organization, you can be more confident in your communication. You can be confident, especially if you're looking to change jobs, and be proud and add that term to your resume. We educate the business owners to add entrepreneurship to their job descriptions to increase the level of the candidate or improve the level of the candidate. And we've tested that out several times where we ran an A and a B, one without entrepreneur and the other one with entrepreneur. And we'll typically just add a little bullet point on the job description. And then we ask the business owner to test it as well. And it comes back every single time, 2 different candidate bases, 2 different profiles, and typically the one with the entrepreneur where they list that. And it could be a blurb, it could be the tendencies, it could be on their website. We share best practice, however the business owner decides to do it. They just see the level of candidate improve. So from the individual's perspective, I want to coach and teach those individuals, because what it's done for me in my career, the success and the gratitude and everything else that comes along with that, I want to educate people that self-identify other behaviors and things to improve their career as well.
So I have another question. So hold on one second. This is a little bit like open discussion. So I forgot to ask you this when we were kind of preparing, but how do small and medium businesses find you? What is the problem? I mean, as I am now in my entrepreneurship, after having been an entrepreneur for years, it's always about what is the problem you solve or what is the opportunity you help others gain. And so tell me a little bit more about the kind of context.
Yeah. So are you asking me what exactly at the end of the day, you cut through everything, what we're solving for the business?
Well, 2 things. One, what do they come to you for? Mm-hmm. Because they come to you based on something. And then maybe that changes because you educate them or there's more co-creation going on. So it might be 2 different things.
It really is 2 different things, because and as you and I are growing our boutique firms and things of that nature, because I do have a wide range of experiences and I've been able to work with thousands of companies. And that's what attracted me to the equipment finance industry when I jumped into corporate America, is because I wanted to continue working with entrepreneurs, because I was one. I understood their challenges and opportunities. I understood what it was to try and make payroll. So I could bring a macro view to the companies that we worked with. And now I'm just transitioning that to our company, which is called Able Leadership. And Able is an acronym that stands for, and this is to answer your question specifically, analyze, build, leverage, execute, because there's no two companies that are exactly the same. And our program just isn't a cookie cutter where we say, do this and this will happen, because we'll go into some organizations and they've reached out to us, or they've seen, I've spoken somewhere, or a lot of referrals now. That's where it's picking up momentum. And it can be everything, again, from engagement from employees to high turnover in employees. We had one company that we were working with that had a significant turnover issue. We went in, we deployed iOS, and within a year, their turnover decreased 84%. It was bad. Now, granted, it was very bad. However, the business owner realized that, and he understood that they could not maintain this to continue to grow or just shut the business down. It was really, that pain was so significant. So again, it's really different businesses have different needs, and we'll go in and work with them. It could be just a stagnant issue. It could be where they've reached where they feel they've been at a certain revenue size and they can't break through. I always have a saying that the people, unfortunately, that maybe have gotten you to that level probably aren't the same people that are going to get you to the next level. And they're looking for fine little tweaks to do that. And keep in mind, entrepreneurs think of resources like their own. So they're never going to come into an organization and start asking for things that are unrealistic. Okay. They're resourceful. They're going to figure it out. Like the story I mentioned earlier in regards to the portal, there was no budget there. He had to drive that without dollars to make that happen. And that's
I completely relate. I can't tell you how many times I did that. Like, imagine this. I worked at Microsoft during the Xbox launch.
Oh.
And so I had switched jobs. So I ran a team of what we called operational account managers. And Microsoft at the time decided to disintermediate the distributors. So what that meant, fancy word, but what it meant was that we, as a manufacturer of our mice and keyboards and software, would sell directly to retail. And so we stood up a whole team. That in of itself was a heavy lift and took 18 months. Mm-hmm. Then Ballmer decides we're going to create Xbox and a $1 billion supply chain in less than 18 months. And I remember we had to double the staff because the contracts were different. There's something called street dates. I don't know if you have kids that wanted Xbox. Anyway, all the retailers can't sell it until this particular date, anyway, and the complexities. And I was just like, okay, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I spent an entire year hiring. Like, I couldn't do anything else but hire because we had to double the number of people in order to manage that. And so I was, at least I had the resources to hire people, but it was just me doing it. So I kind of relate. I don't know if that helps you, but it kind of relates.
No, it does. And I'm glad you bring up Mr. Ballmer, because he's the greatest entrepreneur of all time, or one of the, entrepreneurs that really is spoken about quite a bit. And keep in mind, we talked about earlier, what's in it for the entrepreneur. Okay. Well, as of March, and this is data and it's worth much more now, but as of March 2020, his net worth was $59.1 billion. Okay.
Actually, the whole Xbox was an entrepreneur, because it was that I know the background. A bunch of people figured out on their own that they create. I mean, Microsoft wasn't in the gaming business, and they're still in the gaming business, years later. So
I just wrote a recent blog article on LinkedIn this weekend about 5 companies that missed the innovation and improvement mark. And there's, we talk about the positives like Xbox and things of that nature. And then we could go on and on and on and on in regards to that. But however, it's very important to point out where people had the opportunity to innovate and improve and have that type of culture, and they didn't. Blockbuster is the one that everyone remembers. Borders Bookstore, Kodak. They're the first ones that actually designed the digital camera and had the patent on it. So again, it goes. That's why I'm so passionate about the culture piece of it, because if you had the culture to leverage the ideas and take the calculated risks, these companies would still be around and
Yeah, we learned about that. I mean, think about Sears. Like, Sears should have been Amazon because they had a catalog before everything was on it. But that was that's a whole nother story. But really quickly, I'm having this like aha moment, because I think you know a little bit about my background. But for the audience, if you haven't listened to some of the other shows, I had a really unusual series of events happened in my career when I was at Costco, and it showed the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And so my question to you, and I'll get to in a minute, but I'll tell you my background. A mentor is not in the driver's seat of a relationship. The mentee drives. They need to own their career. They need to drive what it is that they want to get from their mentee, the mentor. The mentors share relevant experience and, perhaps even advice if they're asked. A sponsor, my definition, is they put their own political capital on the line in a room you're not in to help you get either a promotion, extra responsibilities, perhaps like another job at the same level to broaden your experience. And that's what happened to me when I pitched doing what I call leverage mentorship, but a mentee ring program at Costco. And so what happened is I got a sponsor, and all of a sudden I was like, how did I get through these many decades without realizing the importance of a sponsor? But that's a whole nother story. And I looked back and I'd had other sponsors, but anyway. And what she said when I sold her was that, let me do a pilot, we'll prove it out. I'll do all the heavy lifting. And, Costco, if anyone's a member listening, please know that Costco uses your dollars wisely. And so most of the people that are doing this sort of thing are volunteers. They had like 2.5 full-time people for the size of the company and their diversity and inclusion group. And so I did all the heavy lifting and hundreds of hours over 5 years. But we graduated over 200 people in 5 years. I got to know and recruit 40 mentors. I taught the mentors how to be mentors and the mentees how to be mentee, and it wasn't at all what I was getting paid to do. And so to me, that's a perfect entrepreneurship example. But the key thing was the sponsorship. So getting back to you, do you have something in, as part of your process in your culture to help educate what senior folks need to do? They need to sponsor.
They do, and I love that. And we've never used that type of process in terms of the sponsorship for or mentor mentee, because the intrapreneur thinks like you do. They're not looking for that sponsor to keep moving forward and blast through, break down walls, and do things of that nature. But I do love the concept of it. And what really resonated with me was, we have a mentoring program as well in our Equipment Leasing and Finance Association. And that's one of my main speaking points is you own your career. Your manager doesn't, your parents don't, your mentor doesn't, you own it. And it's amazing every time I say that in front of a group, how many eyes light up and they're like, oh, they don't think of it like that. And again, I wouldn't be sitting where I am by just sitting back and not always pressing and controlling, my career path and understanding where you want to go. And guess what? Wherever we want to go, it's not going to be the way that we think we're going to get there. So you have to enjoy the journey and go back to the life learning and things of that nature. And, typically good things happen to good people when you work hard and put in the effort. And again, who you surround yourself with, and networking is a key component of that.
Right. Well, in your example with the gentleman who wanted to build the platform, in that instance, I would say you were a sponsor.
By all means. Yeah. I just wasn't an official, we're going to sponsor.
Yeah, not like, I worked at Microsoft where they have program charters. Yeah. I mean, it could be informal, but the role that you're playing is, like I said, in a room.
I allowed him the freedom to be able to go do that, understanding that this is a very, very key point right here. This point is critical. I understood that if there was a risk that he might fail in trying to deploy this. And guess what? I was okay with that because I was going to allow him. He was carrying the heavy lifting. He was doing all the work. He just had to keep me updated. And again, my expectations, because of my personal blind spot, was very low. So you have to allow people to do that and understand that we've had things that have failed too. That there have been initiatives where, we think it's going to be a great idea. And, you have to, my only advice on that is you have to cut those off quick. It's not going to change, by another 30 or 60 days. If you believe that, it will catch up. But yes, I like that sponsorship type of, mentality. And
you had your political capital on the line, giving him the room to fail, where you'd have his back and you'd, explain what and when asked. We were experimenting. I mean, that's, I always think of it kind of in terms of the software, right?
Right.
You experiment, I mean,
And really the human capital was up front, because I had to call IT, explain to our CIO what we were going to try and do. And he was going to take, because again, it's a salesperson with an organization all of a sudden now working with the IT department. And, so I had to, tee it up. But again, it goes back to having the leadership within the organization be willing to do that for the overall good of the company, and not keep people just in their lanes and that's it.
Yeah. And so being so risk averse that you're not allowing the room for small, controlled experiments, if you will, and whatever that risk was, they call it like kind of failing forward, if you will. Mm-hmm. If you can fail fast enough and you can then, and this is, I kind of think of it in agile, but any sort of, cycle, if you do it in a cycle that, okay, we did the first 2 weeks and what did we find out, and we adjust and all that. So,
well, it's the flywheel approach where it's a flywheel. And at the end of the day, even on the projects that have failed, we always took learnings from that. Absolutely. So it was all about the learnings and not about, oh, it failed. It's like, but we gained all the knowledge in these areas for next time. And maybe we were too early with the product. Maybe we were too early. But really, the other thing is about improvement in processes within the organization. As I mentioned earlier about level 1, level 2, and level 3, there's different phases of businesses too, right? It's pre-rev, it's rev, and then it's scale. And the only way you as a business owner is going to scale is going to have those level 3 and a 20% of entrepreneurs in your company. You still might be successful without entrepreneurs. However, with entrepreneurs in your organization that are identified and earmarked, you're going to see that growth a lot faster. And it's proven out, historically over and over again.
That's amazing. So let's wrap this up here. We've been having too much fun on this whole section of questions that just naturally came up. So maybe just one important lesson that you think your entrepreneurship journey has taught you?
I would say the most important lessons, I've been very blessed by this mindset. I have, again, have had an absolutely amazing career ride that, of course, has rewarded me and my family. And again, I did not have to front capital to go out and do what I love on a daily basis, but received all the benefits of that. And I'm a life learner. Every single day I'm looking to learn, and sometimes to a detriment, right? Squirrel, learn this, learn that, for staying true to my core of who I want to be and help business owners. So that's really the journey it's taught me, is just never stop trying to get better, never stop learning. And guess what? Every single business owner out there needs an entrepreneur. We are the doers for the dreamers, and that entrepreneur is the dreamer. There's a visionary. We come behind and make sure that we're co-missioning with them to help them with their vision and mission. And I'm okay being in the second spot. I don't need to be out front running. Just like in my CEO role, I had a boss, I had a board, I had to answer to someone. I allowed them to tell me where they want to go, but I also had my input of these are the areas that I think we should focus on to ensure that we're driving shareholder value as well as customer satisfaction.
That's wonderful. So would you share with us some of your 2024 priorities as we round out the 2023 year?
Yeah, our biggest priority for next year is getting that software deployed and really figuring that out. And it's not easy. You've been in tech a lot of your career, and every time every time you think you're a step closer, sometimes it's 2 steps backwards. And unlike my patient, I've learned to become more patient over the years. However, when I'm as excited and I truly understand the value of what this can do for organizations, I want it out in the market as fast as we can get it out to the market. However, I want to ensure that it's right and with a roadmap too for development too. So that's our number one priority. And then just evangelizing entrepreneurship and making sure that everyone in the world knows what it is and it means different things to different people. And this is our little corner that we believe how it should work. But that's our top priorities. And if we do those two things well, everything else takes care of itself. And, again, just help individuals who want to be an entrepreneur and help business owners grow their business with entrepreneurs.
That's awesome. So let me share with everybody how they can get in touch with you, because I think you have like a Intrapreneurship Facebook page.
I do. I have a group for anyone that would like to join and share best practices. It's a fairly active group in terms of other entrepreneurs across the country. They've come from all different, facets: HR, sales, leadership, product managers. So if you'd like to join the group, you can just go to my website and there's a pop-up that will actually send you an invite, or it'll bring you right to the room. Or if you just want to reach out to me, I respond to all my emails. There's a contact form on there as well.
Awesome. Well, just so much gratitude for you coming, RJ, and letting us kind of have an organic conversation. And I feel so much more smarter around kind of these traits of entrepreneurship, and loving to hear more about your success in the future. So I'm sure we'll be in touch. And thank you again.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm here. And as you can tell, I could talk hours about this. So
you, me both.